Before we dive into today's terrifying stories, if you love true horror and mysterious cases, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a story. Smash that like button if you're ready to get scared, and drop a comment to tell us which story shocked you the most. Now, let's begin. It was a kind of Texas night that made you question whether the darkness itself was alive. The highway stretched on forever, broken only by the occasional flicker of neon, a reminder that somewhere out there, civilization still existed. But for most of that drive, I felt like I was the only person on Earth. I'd been on the road for hours, trying to make good time before sunrise, the tires humming a steady rhythm against the asphalt. It was after midnight, and exhaustion was setting in, the kind that makes your eyes blur and your instincts dull. That's when I saw it. A lone gas station glowing faintly in the distance, like a moth-eaten lantern in a sea of black. I should have kept going. I should have trusted that voice in my head whispering, "Don't stop here." But fatigue and the gas gauge leaning dangerously toward empty left me with no choice. I pulled off the highway, my headlights sweeping across cracked pavement, weeds pushing through concrete, and a building that looked like it hadn't seen a renovation since the 1970s. The lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting more shadows than clarity. The place felt deserted, except for one detail that made my stomach twist. A beat-up sedan was parked near the pumps, and standing next to it, half in the glow of the fluorescence, was a man. He wasn't pumping gas. He wasn't moving at all. He was just standing there. At first, I thought maybe he was waiting for someone, but as my car rolled up, he turned his head slowly toward me. Even from inside my car, with the windows rolled up, I could feel the weight of his stare. His clothes hung loose, his face half hidden by shadow, and his posture was too rigid, unnatural, like a mannequin that had been posed just slightly wrong. I told myself not to overthink it. People stopped at gas stations all the time. But my pulse quickened as I stepped out of the car, forcing myself to stay calm. The air outside was thick, carrying the smell of dust and oil. I slid my card into the pump, trying to act casual, but every hair on the back of my neck was standing up. That's when I noticed he was watching me, not glancing, not casually observing, watching. His eyes never moved, never blinked. I tried to keep my focus on the pump, but the silence was unbearable. Then, without a word, he started walking, not toward the building, not toward his car, toward me. I froze. My instincts screamed at me to get back inside my vehicle, but my body felt heavy, glued to the ground. His footsteps were slow but deliberate, echoing softly against the cracked pavement. By the time he was only a few yards away, I could make out more of his face. His expression was blank, almost hungry. He stopped just short of speaking distance, tilting his head the way an animal sizes up prey. I swallowed hard, forcing out words that sounded steadier than I felt. Evening. No reply, just that same tilted head, his eyes boring into mine. Something about his silence was worse than any words he could have said. I yanked the nozzle from my car, not caring that I hadn't filled the tank, and shoved it back into the pump. I was already moving toward the driver's side door when a sound cut through the night. A woman's voice. It was faint, but clear, coming from somewhere behind me. "Don't stay here. Get back on the road." I whipped around, searching the shadows. An old woman stood near the corner of the building, half hidden in the dim light. She wasn't dressed like someone stopping for gas. No purse, no keys, just a plain dress that looked out of another time. Her face was weathered, but her eyes were piercing. The man froze when she spoke, his posture stiffening, his gaze flicking toward her for the first time. For a moment, it felt like they knew each other, or worse, like he feared her. I didn't wait to find out. My instincts finally roared back to life, and I dove into my car, slamming the locks down just as he took a step closer. My engine roared to life, tires squealing against the pavement as I sped toward the exit. In my rear-view mirror, I saw the man standing perfectly still again, just watching me go. The woman, however, was gone, vanished, as if she'd never been there. The highway swallowed me up again, the darkness pressing in on both sides. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. Every time headlights appeared in the distance, I gripped the steering wheel tighter, convinced that beat-up sedan was following me. But mile after mile passed, and the road stayed empty. I couldn't shake the image of that woman's face. Her voice echoed in my ears. "Don't stay here. Get back on the road." It didn't feel like a suggestion. It felt like a command. Who was she? Another traveler who'd stopped at the wrong place? Someone who lived nearby? Or something else entirely? I've told this story to a few people since then, and the reactions vary. Some think the man was just a drifter, high or unstable, looking to intimidate. Others believe the old woman was a guardian of sorts, a roadside angel who appeared to get me out before something terrible happened. But there's one detail I've never been able to explain. When I checked the gas gauge a few miles down the road, I realized something impossible. I'd barely pumped for 5 seconds before I cut it short, but somehow my tank was full. I don't know what would have happened if I'd ignored her warning, if I'd hesitated for just a few more minutes at that gas station. Maybe the man would have attacked. Maybe I would have disappeared like others whose stories never get told. But I do know this. The next time you're driving through Texas and you see one of those lonely, flickering gas stations on the edge of nowhere, trust your gut. Because sometimes the road gives you a choice, and sometimes it sends you a warning. The ocean at night has a strange kind of silence. Not the comforting hush you hear during the day when gulls cry overhead and children splash in the surf, but deeper, more unsettling quiet. It's a silence of isolation, the kind that makes you aware of every sound that doesn't belong. I was a teenager at the time, maybe 16, and I had joined my family on a camping trip at a small beachside campground. The spot was beautiful during the day, dunes rolling like waves, the salty breeze carrying laughter from tents and camper vans scattered across the sand. But once the sun dipped below the horizon, the place felt different, remote, exposed. The campground was simple, a scattering of wooden picnic tables, fire pits, and a few run-down facilities. Off to one side stood an old shack, gray with weather, leaning slightly as though it had been fighting the sea wind for decades. The adults said it was just storage, locked up tight. Nobody went near it, but it was that shack that would burn itself into my memory forever. The first night passed uneventfully, filled with roasted marshmallows and stories around the fire. But on the second night, as I sat at the picnic table fiddling with my flashlight, I noticed something strange. Across the sand, near the shack, a man was standing. He wasn't moving, not adjusting anything, not talking to anyone. He just stood there, half in the moonlight, half in shadow. His face was turned toward me, though at that distance I couldn't make out features. I nudged my cousin beside me. "You see that?" I whispered. She squinted, then frowned. "There's nobody there." But there was. I know there was, because as the firelight flickered, I saw him shift, a subtle lean forward, like someone trying to get a better look. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just a local out for a walk, or one of the other campers stretching his legs. But unease prickled at me, and I found myself glancing back at the shack every few minutes. Each time he was still there, watching. Curiosity gnawed at me. The next afternoon, when the sun was high and the camp felt safe again, I wandered over to the shack. It was splintered and bleached, the door padlocked, the windows coated with salt and grime. I pressed my ear to the wall, half expecting to hear movement inside, but all I got was the creak of timber and the distant crash of waves. There were no footprints around it, no sign anyone had been standing there the night before. That night, though, he returned. We were cleaning up after dinner when I saw him again. Same place, same posture, just standing. This time, I forced myself to look longer, to be sure I wasn't imagining it. The fire popped, sending sparks into the air, and for a moment the glow illuminated his face. pale, expressionless, his eyes fixed directly on me. I froze, a piece of tin foil slipping from my hands. And then he moved, not toward the ocean, not toward the camp, toward the shack's wall. With slow, deliberate steps, he circled around the side and vanished from view. I waited 10 seconds, 30, a full minute, but he didn't come back out. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I found myself lying awake in the tent. The nylon walls flapped with the breeze, but another sound threaded its way through, crunching, the unmistakable sound of footsteps on sand. I held my breath. The steps grew closer, stopping just outside the tent. For a long moment, all I could hear was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then, softly, a shadow passed across the thin fabric. Tall, narrow, lingering. I wanted to scream for my parents, but fear pinned me down. I just lay there, staring at the outline, praying it would leave. And finally, it did. The footsteps retreated, fading back toward the shack. The next morning, I couldn't shake the terror. I went back to the shack, this time dragging my cousin with me. There, in the sand near the wall, were footprints, large ones, fresh ones. I pointed them out, my voice shaking. See? I wasn't imagining it. But when we showed the adults, the prints were gone, erased overnight, either by the tide or by someone deliberately covering them. On the last night of our trip, the campground was quieter than usual. Families had packed up early, leaving only a few campers scattered across the site. That's when he appeared again. But this time, he wasn't near the shack. He was closer, much closer, standing between two empty fire pits, no more than 30 feet from our tent. The firelight flickered across his pale face, and I swear I saw the faintest hint of smile. I grabbed my cousin's arm, whispering frantically, but when she looked, he was already moving, slipping into the shadows, heading straight for the shack. My chest tightened. I knew, somehow, that if I didn't act, if I didn't get away, something terrible was going to happen that night. So when my parents finally doused a fire and zipped up the tent, I didn't sleep. I kept my shoes on, my flashlight ready, waiting for the sound of those footsteps. But they never came, because at some point in the night, a storm rolled in, lashing the camp with rain and wind so fierce it drowned out everything else. By morning, the shack looked even more weather-beaten, its roof sagging under the weight of water, and the man was gone. We never saw him again. The rest of the trip passed quietly, and when we left, I felt a strange relief, like I was escaping something I wasn't supposed to survive. To this day, I don't know who he was or why he stood there night after night, watching from the shadows. Maybe he was a local with sinister intentions. Maybe he was something else entirely, tied to that crumbling shack by the sea. All I know is this: when the ocean grows silent, when the wind dies down and the night feels too still, that's when I remember his face. And I remember how close he came to stepping out of the shadows and into my life forever. The backcountry has its own kind of silence. It's not like the calm you feel in a park or a backyard. It's deeper, heavier. A silence broken only by the occasional snap of a twig or the low call of something unseen in the trees. When you're out there, far from city lights and crowded neighborhoods, you realize how vulnerable you really are. That's exactly where I found myself one summer night, miles from the nearest town, my headlights cutting a narrow path through endless woods. The road was gravel, uneven, and so rarely used it felt like I was the last person alive. I'd been driving for hours, and the isolation was starting to weigh on me. The trees pressed close on either side, their branches arching overhead like ribs of some enormous skeleton. My radio had long since given out, leaving me alone with the hum of the engine and the crunch of gravel beneath my tires. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was just another shadow, but as I drew closer, the shape resolved into a man standing in the middle of the road. His car sat off to the side, but open, hazard lights blinking faintly like dying fireflies. I slowed, instinctively cautious. He waved as I approached, a slow, deliberate gesture that didn't feel quite right. Rolling down the window just a crack, I called out, "Need some help?" His smile was too quick, too wide. "Yeah, battery's dead. Any chance you could give me a jump?" He sounded normal enough, but something in his tone felt off. Too rehearsed, like lines from a script. Still, I didn't want to be the person who drove past someone stranded. I pulled over, gravel crunching under my tires, and killed the engine. His vehicle was an older model sedan, dusty and dented. The hood was up, but what really caught my attention was the trunk. A thick, heavy blanket was draped across it, tucked in carefully, like it was hiding something. The night was warm, humid even. There was no reason to be carrying around such a thick blanket, let alone covering the trunk with it. I felt my stomach tighten. The man walked toward me, too casually, his grin fixed in place. He carried a set of jumper cables, holding them out like an offering. "Appreciate this. Been stuck out here for hours." I glanced at the blanket again, unable to stop myself. The fabric shifted ever so slightly, as if something beneath it had settled. Every instinct in me screamed that something wasn't right. His story didn't add up. If he'd been stranded for hours, where were his belongings? Why wasn't there any sign of frustration or exhaustion? And why, out of all places, was his trunk covered so carefully, like it was hiding a secret he didn't want anyone to see? I forced a smile, keeping my voice steady. "Sure, pop your hood all the way. I'll pull up closer." But instead of moving to front of his car, he stayed exactly where he was, watching me. His eyes glinted in the dim light, unblinking. That was the moment I knew. If I got out of my car, I wouldn't be getting back in. My hand slid slowly to the gear shift. He was only a few feet away now, the jumper cables dangling from his hand, that grin never fading. "You're a lifesaver," he said softly, and then he took a step closer. I didn't think. I slammed the car into reverse, tires spitting gravel as I shot backward down the road. His smile dropped instantly, twisting into something darker, more furious. He lunged toward my door, his hand slapping against the glass just as I sped away. In the rear-view mirror, I saw him stumble back, the blanket on his trunk slipping slightly. For a split second, I thought I saw something beneath it, something pale, something that made my blood run cold. But I didn't slow down to look again. My hand shook on the steering wheel as I tore through the backcountry roads, gravel skidding under my tires. My pulse thundered in my ears, louder than the engine, louder than anything else. Every curve in the road felt like it would be the one where his headlights appeared behind me. Every shadow between the trees seemed like it might peel away and reveal him, chasing me down. But he never followed, or at least, if he did, I never saw him. For weeks afterward, I couldn't stop replaying it in my head. What was under that blanket? Why was he really out there? The police told me I did the right thing by leaving. They also told me, in a tone that chilled me more than the encounter itself, that I wasn't the first person to report something strange in that area. Others had seen him, or someone like him, always stranded, always asking for help, always with that blanket covering the trunk. But nobody ever stuck around long enough to find out what was underneath. Maybe he was just some desperate stranger with an odd habit. Maybe the blanket hid nothing more than tools, or junk he didn't want anyone to see. Or maybe, and this is what I believe, that blanket was the difference between me driving away alive and me never being heard from again. So here's the lesson I learned that night. When you're alone on a backcountry road and someone waves you down, listen to your instincts, because sometimes the most dangerous traps don't look like traps at all. On a quiet summer night in Texas back in 2013, a man named Brandon Lawson vanished without a trace after making one of the most chilling 911 calls ever recorded. His disappearance has baffled investigators, divided the online community, and sparked countless theories that range from foul play to something far more mysterious. But the deeper you look into this case, the stranger becomes. And the haunting words Brandon spoke on that call still echo in people's minds to this day. Brandon Lawson was just 26 years old, a father of four, and described by friends as hardworking, ambitious, and family-oriented. But like many young men in small-town America, Brandon had been struggling with personal demons. Reports suggest he had recently battled issues with substance use, and on the night of August 8, 2013, tensions between him and his longtime girlfriend Ledessa reached a boiling point. After a heated argument, Brandon stormed out of their San Angelo home and got into his truck. He planned to drive to his father's house, about 3 hours away, but Brandon never made it there. Instead, what unfolded was one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries in Texas history. At 12:50 a.m., Brandon dialed 911. His voice was panicked, shaky, and almost incoherent at times. The transcript still sends shivers down the spine of anyone who reads it. "Yes, I'm in the middle of a field. I ran into some guys. We're out here going toward Abilene on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. One car here got chased into the woods. Please hurry." The dispatcher tried to get more information, but Brandon's words grew harder to understand. He mentioned the first guys and something about being chased. Then silence. The line remained open for a few minutes before disconnecting. That was the last confirmed contact anyone had with Brandon. When officers arrived at the scene on Route 277, they found Brandon's truck abandoned on the side of the road. The gas tank was empty, just as he had said, but Brandon himself was nowhere to be found. What stood out even more was that his cell phone, wallet, and keys were missing. It was as if he had vanished into thin air after placing that call. His brother Kyle arrived later with a gas can, hoping to help, but despite calling out for Brandon and searching nearby, there was no sign of him. The chilling detail? At one point during the search, Kyle's phone rang. It was Brandon calling. But when Kyle answered, all he heard was static and muffled noises before the call dropped. From that night forward, Brandon's disappearance has sparked a flood of theories, each one stranger than the last. Some believe Brandon was attacked or ambushed by unknown individuals that night, the very people he seemed to reference in his 911 call. But no bodies, evidence, or suspects have ever been linked to the case. Others speculate that Brandon's erratic speech may have been a result of drug use, paranoia, or even hallucinations, causing him to imagine danger where there was none. Still, that doesn't explain the terrifying urgency in his voice, or the fact that he never turned up. And then there's a theory that chills people most, that Brandon Lawson stumbled into something he wasn't supposed to see. Some locals whisper about drug trafficking routes near that stretch of highway, and believe Brandon might have accidentally crossed paths with dangerous people who silence him forever. Brandon's mysterious 911 call has been dissected countless times by true crime enthusiasts online. Forums, YouTube videos, and podcasts have played and replayed the recording, each listener convinced they hear something different in the garbled words. Some swear Brandon says, "I'm bleeding." Others insist he said, "They're chasing me." A few even claim they hear a gunshot in the background. But with poor audio quality and heavy static, no one can agree on the truth. This obsession has turned Brandon's case into one of the most debated internet mysteries of the last decade, with theories ranging from cartel involvement to supernatural explanations. For Brandon's family, the endless speculation has only added to their pain. His girlfriend Ledessa has repeatedly stated that despite their fight, Brandon would never have abandoned his children voluntarily. His brother Kyle continues to search tirelessly for answers, haunted by that last phone call he received. But with no new evidence and no body ever found, the Lawson family remains stuck in limbo, desperate for closure but unable to move forward. What keeps people awake at night isn't just the fact that Brandon vanished. It's the way he sounded on that 911 call. The terror in his voice, the sense that he was running from something or someone just moments before disappearing. Even after all these years, that recording stands as a chilling reminder of the unknown. Who was Brandon running from? What did he see that night in that dark Texas field? And why has no trace of him ever been found? Brandon Lawson's disappearance is a haunting mystery that leaves us with more questions than answers. His 911 call remains one of the most chilling in modern history, a desperate plea for help from a man who seemed to know something terrible was closing in. And maybe that's the scariest part, because until the truth comes out, Brandon's words will continue to echo in the minds of everyone who hears them. I'm in the middle of the field, please hurry. Some mysteries are haunting not just because of what happened, but because of what we saw. In 2013, a young Canadian student named Elisa Lam was found dead in one of the most infamous hotels in Los Angeles, the Cecil Hotel. But before her body was discovered, the world witnessed one of the strangest and most unsettling pieces of footage ever released. Elevator surveillance video that seemed to show Elisa behaving in ways no one could explain. To this day, people argue about what really happened inside that elevator and why Elisa Lam ended up in a place no one should ever have been. Elisa Lam was just 21 years old, a student from Vancouver who had set out on a solo trip to California. She was bright, curious, and loved sharing her experiences online. Elisa frequently updated her Tumblr blog, posting about her thoughts, struggles, and adventures, which gave the world a deeply personal window into her life. Her trip seemed ordinary at first, visiting bookstores, exploring tourist attractions, and staying in budget-friendly hotels. But when she checked into the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, her story took a dark and unforgettable turn. To understand this case, you have to know about the hotel itself. The Cecil wasn't just any building. It was a place with a dark past. Built in the 1920s as a luxury hotel, it fell into decline over the decades and became notorious for crime, violence, and even serial killers who once stayed there. Locals whispered that the place was cursed. By the time Elisa arrived, the Cecil had a reputation for being dangerous, with long-term residents living alongside transient guests. It wasn't exactly the kind of place you'd expect a young student to book, but Elisa chose it anyway, perhaps unaware of the hotel's dark history. On January 31st, 2013, Elisa failed to contact her family, and when she didn't check out the hotel as planned, her parents grew worried. Soon after, police released surveillance footage from one of the Cecil's elevators, and it changed everything. The video shows Elisa stepping into the elevator, pressing several buttons, and then acting in a way that left millions of viewers disturbed. She peeks out as if she's being followed, quickly steps back inside, waves her arms in strange, almost frantic motions, and even appears to be talking to someone who isn't there. At times, her body language looks terrified. Other times, almost playful. Then, she steps out of the elevator and the doors close. Elisa was never seen alive again. For nearly 3 weeks, Elisa remained missing. Guests at the Cecil began complaining of low water pressure, dark-colored tap water, and even a strange taste coming from the faucets. On February 19th, hotel staff went to the roof to check the water tanks. Inside one of them, they made a horrifying discovery: Elisa Lam's body, floating lifelessly in the tank. She was naked, her clothes found nearby. The tank had been sealed, requiring a ladder to reach and significant effort to open. How Elisa ended up there is one of the most chilling mysteries in recent history. The autopsy eventually ruled Elisa's death as an accidental drowning, with her bipolar disorder listed as a contributing factor. Authorities suggested that she may have suffered a mental health episode, wandered the roof, and somehow climbed into the tank herself. But the explanation didn't sit right with everyone. The elevator footage, the sealed water tank, and the eerie circumstances surrounding her disappearance led many to believe there was more to the story. Elisa's case exploded online, with people around the world trying to piece together the puzzle. Dozens of theories surfaced. Murder. Some believe Elisa was being followed or targeted, pointing to her frantic behavior in the video as evidence. But no suspects were ever identified. Paranormal activity. Given the Cecil Hotel's reputation and Elisa's strange gestures, others insist she may have encountered something not of this world. The video almost looks like she's interacting with an unseen presence. Conspiracy. A darker theory suggests the hotel staff or others were involved, possibly covering up foul play. After all, how could Elisa have managed to get into the water tank alone? Mental health crisis. The most accepted theory is that Elisa suffered a severe episode related to her bipolar disorder, which tragically led to her death. But even this explanation doesn't fully answer how she accessed the rooftop without triggering alarms, or how she managed to climb into the tank. The reason Elisa Lam's story remains so haunting isn't just a tragedy. It's the unanswered questions. The grainy footage of her final moments leaves too much open to interpretation. Was she hiding from someone? Talking to herself? Or did she encounter something no one else could see? The thought of her final hours, the fear, confusion, and ultimate fate, continues to chill people to the bone. And the water tank discovery adds another horrifying layer. For weeks, unsuspecting hotel guests have been drinking, bathing, and brushing their teeth with the very water her body was floating in. That gruesome detail alone is enough to ensure no one ever forgets the name Elisa Lam. The death of Elisa Lam is one of the most unsettling mysteries of the 21st century. It's a story that combines tragedy, the eerie atmosphere of the Cecil Hotel, and a piece of footage that still gives people nightmares. Was it a tragic accident, a crime, or something far stranger? We may never know the truth, but one thing is certain. The haunting image of Elisa Lam's final moments will stay with us forever. Thanks for watching these 5 shocking real-life horror stories. Which one terrified you most? Tell us in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe for more terrifying true stories every week, and share this video with a friend who loves scary mysteries. Until next time, stay safe and keep the lights on.